Hello, everyone. My name is John Mays. I'm with Novari Science and Classical Academic Press, and this is the video series Cultivating Wonder Throughout the School. I've subtitled it Developing a Wonderated Mind, and we'll talk about what that means. Most of you know me as a science guy, but I've designed this particular video series to apply to everyone in the school, not just science teachers. So I hope others can benefit from this as well. Let's get started. I have a quote here from Annie Dillard. It's from her book, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, which won the Pulitzer Prize. If the landscape reveals one certainty, it is that the extravagant gesture is the very stuff of creation. After the one extravagant gesture of creation in the first place, the universe has continued to deal exclusively in extravagances, flinging intricacies and colossi down eons of emptiness, heaping profusions on profligacies with ever-fresh vigor. The whole show has been on fire from the word go. I come down to the water to cool my eyes, but everywhere I look, I see fire. That which isn't flint is tinder, and the whole world sparks and flames. Developing the wonderated mind is basically learning to look at the world the way Annie Dillard is looking about it in this quote. Now I'm going to begin this video with a model lesson, or rather an introduction of a lesson introducing light and electromagnetic waves. This lesson might appear, for example, if you're teaching introductory physics in 9th grade, and you get to the chapter on sound and light and on waves, and you are ready to introduce the electromagnetic spectrum and light. I'm going to model for you how you might do this instead of just walking into the material that's in the text. So right now, or with the next slide, I'm going to take off my presenter hat and I'm going to put on my teacher hat and act like I'm speaking to students in the classroom. Here we go. Good morning, students. Regarding light, I have a question for you. Do we know what we're talking about? You can see these images down here at the bottom of this screen. These are diagrams out of your text, different representations or models of electromagnetic waves. The one on the left is trying to show how the magnetic and electric fields in light are, how we understand them geometrically in space. And the one on the right has more to do with the way photons of light are in phase with one another if the light is coherent, which we'll talk about later. But right now I want to ask this question. Do we know what we're talking about when we present diagrams like this? Well, here are a couple of things people have said. A famous mathematician, Morris Klein, said, "We have not the slightest physical knowledge of what electromagnetic waves are." A famous physicist, Richard Feynman, who actually won the Nobel Prize in Physics back in the 1950s, he said this, "While I am describing to you how nature works, you won't understand why nature works that way. But you see, nobody understands that." I'm going to play a musical selection for you, and we're going to meditate on light from a different perspective for a few minutes, and then we will discuss what we've been listening to. I'm going to show you an image, and it has a Latin text and an English text there too, so you can see a translation as we go through. I suggest you listen to this with high-quality headphones. All right, let's reflect for the next 4 minutes as you listen and look at this screen. I hope you enjoyed that. That's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard. In 4 minutes, the text of this piece moves from meditating on light, warm and heavy as pure gold, to Jesus, the newborn babe. Well, this suggests that we should reflect on light and God and their relationship. So let us do so. First, let's talk about light and God. The scriptures have a lot to say about this. 1 John 1:5 says that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. 1 Timothy 6:16 says of God that he dwells in unapproachable light. The scriptures also relate light and Christ together. Christ is the newborn babe. The angels are singing softly too. In John 1:9, the author of John describes the Logos, Christ, as the true light which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. Jesus himself said of himself, I am the light of the world. We might compare this to Matthew 5:14, where Jesus says to his disciples, you are the light of the world. I think that's very interesting. The scriptures are pretty clear that all things are made through Christ. And these two famous passages in the New Testament say this explicitly. John 1:3 says, all things were made through him. And Colossians 1:16 and 17 says, by him all things were created. All things were created through him and for him. So we have these connections between creation and Christ. Christ, again, is the newborn babe. And yet this newborn babe is the instrument through which creation exists. And of course, light has a lot to do with creation. The first words in the creation account are, let there be light, Genesis 1:1. Light is also related to salvation in the scriptures, in many places. Psalm 27:1 says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. And Psalm 43:3 says, send out your light and truth. And here's another passage quoting the words of Jesus Christ. This is a narrative told by the Apostle Paul. He was describing the words Jesus said to him when he appeared to Paul on the road to Damascus. And this is Paul narrating what happened in Acts 26. And he quotes Christ as saying, to open their eyes that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God. Now we can also see this in the Nicene Creed, this relationship between Christ and God and light. The Creed says, I believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, God from God, light from light, true God from true God. Through him, all things were made. So there's a lot going on here when we talk about light. When we talk about light, we're talking about, first, the identity of God, since the scriptures say that God is light. We're talking about the identity of Jesus Christ, the Logos, who says, I am the light. We're also talking about a metaphor for salvation, turning from darkness to light. And, of course, we're talking about a phenomenon in creation, which is where the science comes in. But creation was made by the Logos of God, the Word, the rational principle, the reason all of creation has in it the logical, rational, even mathematical structure. It's because it was made by the Logos, who himself contains all reason, all rationality. All right, so when we have this much going on with one subject, we know that when we are talking about light, we are talking about a mystery. So let's come back to our question. When we talk about light, do we know what we're talking about? My answer is not really. Now, my brief introductory lesson ends here, so I'm taking off my teacher hat and putting on my presenter hat again, and we'll talk about what this little model lesson is doing. The whole point to this model lesson and the theme of this entire video series is this. If you want to cultivate wonder in the classroom, throughout the school, the whole key is to apprehend the wonder of the moment by being alert to when you're standing face to face with mystery. When you are standing face to face with mystery, the thing to do at that moment is do something different. Don't do what you normally would do. Don't just open the text up and proceed with the lesson. Everybody turn to page 48. Let's have a look here at this picture, and let's start talking about light. Light, of course, is an easy lesson to model because it's one of the most mysterious and wonderful things there is, for all the reasons that I just went through. But we can do this in many ways, many places throughout the curriculum in lots of different subject areas, every subject area for that matter. The key is to do something different. That means either reveal the wonder of the moment or create a moment full of wonder by the way you package what you do with your students. We will see examples of both. So what I tried to do in that lesson just now was reveal the wonder by citing all these scriptures and other texts that talk about light in these wondrous ways, equating it with God and Christ and its role in creation and its metaphorical role in our salvation, describing our salvation. In other cases, the wonder can be there just because of the way you package your lesson, and we'll look at an example of that as well. Now, when it comes to science, finding moments of wonder is as easy as it gets. Here's a list I made of just a small number of items that occur in the study of science where wonder is right in front of you. And I've listed here with each of these items one or two books that I have enjoyed that bring out some of these wondrous things. I just talked about light, the first one. Another one that I'll mention more than once in this series is the idea of homeostasis. Now, homeostasis, which is discussed at some length in J. Scott Turner's book, Purpose and Desire. Homeostasis is what your cells do to maintain conditions in which they can live. There's a whole bunch of things your body has to do to stay alive. Your blood pH has to be maintained in a very narrow range. Your temperature has to be maintained in a narrow range. You need to process energy, eliminate waste. You need to bring in oxygen, eliminate carbon dioxide. All these things have to be done. You have 37 trillion cells in your body, and they're all doing this at the same time. Moreover, your body as a complete unit is doing this. So it's not just that every one of the 37 trillion cells is functioning this way, but they are coordinated so that they all do it together in unity, in unison, as it were, like a choir that's producing a piece of music that depends on each individual singer singing together in a certain way. Nobody singing a different song. Everybody singing the same song in the same key. That's what's required for your body to stay alive. So you see, the process of homeostasis is a total wonder. Nobody can explain how your body, how everyone's body is able to do this. Turner makes this point in his book, Purpose and Desire, and comments that trying to explain this from mechanical principles alone is impossible, and that biology has painted themselves into a corner by trying to do that and not admitting that there's more to the story than just the mechanisms of chemistry and physics. Another area of amazement is the so-called fine-tuning of the universe. The earliest treatment that I know of that tries to treat this at some length is Henderson's book from the very early 20th century, The Fitness of the Environment. But there are other more recent books by Michael Denton and Barrow and Tipler. Theirs is The Anthropic Principle. Paul Davies has several books of this kind. We'll return to some of these later, but you've probably, if you're a science teacher, you already know this. Most people have heard of the principle of fine-tuning, but there are a great number of things about the universe and about the world that we live in that seem to be dialed into a particular color or state or value, and if the value was even slightly different, complex organisms like us would not be able to exist. And there's a lot of discussion about how that could be. Are we just the luckiest things that ever existed? Have we won the cosmic jackpot, which is one of the phrases Paul Davies uses, one of the titles of his books? Or is there some reason that it's like that? Now, of course, as believers, we affirm that there is a reason that these things are not like this accidentally, that they're deliberately like this. The more you look at science, though, the more this comes up. This keeps coming up, especially in biology. It's just increasing and a never-ending source of amazement to me. I really wasn't aware of this at all until I started editing biology and life science texts years ago, 10 years maybe ago, and started becoming aware of just how glorious processes like mitosis and meiosis and DNA replication are. They're so stunning, so stupefying, that they demand an explanation for how they could be. But going down this list, we're going to hit on a lot of these things in other videos, so I'm not going to go down this list exhaustively here, but I'll just mention a thing or two about a few of these. I mentioned DNA replication a moment ago. You should definitely check out Drew Barry's videos on YouTube, where he tries to use computer graphics to model what the molecules actually look like when DNA replication is occurring, and it's unbelievable. The properties of water, which are discussed in many places, including my own texts, but in Henderson's book, The Fitness of the Environment, he goes through this as well, but there are many unusual properties of water. And, of course, your body is over like 70% water, and the surface of the earth is something like 70% water. Water is the basis of life. We are carbon-based life, but we also water-based life. Life exists where there's water. The presence of water is the number one thing scientists look for when they're looking for life on other planets. If there's water, then they look closer. But here's just one example. Water, unlike almost any other substance, when it's getting colder and colder, well, all substances, when they get colder and colder, get denser, Most substances continue to get denser all the way until they solidify or freeze, except for water. At 4 degrees Celsius, which is 4 degrees Celsius above the freezing point, below that, at 4 degrees, water is as dense as it will get. And below that temperature, it starts getting less dense because the water molecules are moving apart from one another so that they can get oriented the way they need to be to crystallize. And that means they have to be slightly farther apart from each other than they are in their liquid state. So water gets less dense right before it freezes, which means ice is less dense than liquid water, which means it floats, which is a crucial thing for things that live in water. It puts a protective coating over the top of the water so that everything underneath can be protected. It also means that twice a year, when melting and freezing occur, there's a turnover so that the water below in the lake or the pond or the river gets oxygenated. So this is a very important property of water. But water has many properties like this that are very unusual and that are crucial for life as we know it. So talking about water, just talking about water means you're entering into a wonder moment, a moment where you can say, hey, everyone, wait. Let's stop and think about this for a minute. Let's do something different. Cells, the operation of cells is another place. I mentioned a moment ago about homeostasis and the way every one of the 37 trillion cells in your body is maintaining homeostasis. How do they all know how to do this? I mean, we don't know of any intelligence in there, so how do they know how to do this? This is a miraculous thing. Cells use chemical signaling in order to send messages to the nucleus about what genes need copying so that we can make more proteins of this type or fewer proteins of that type. But the more you try to describe this type of signaling, the more complex it gets and the more wonderful it gets. And it defies possibility that this kind of thing emerged by itself at random, the way the materialists would have us believe. This is why science is helping our apologetic. It's because the more we know, the more wonderful it gets, the less it's possible to talk about it in mechanistic terms. Science is doing us a big favor these days. Astronomy. 120 years ago, it was pretty common for astronomers to believe that the universe had always existed just as it is in a sort of stasis. There was no idea that it had a beginning one time. And then it was discovered that the universe is expanding. And then it became obvious that if the universe was expanding, then that means it had to have had an origin, a place from which it is expanding, a middle of some sort. And that meant it had to have a beginning. And the astronomers were just blown away by the idea that the universe had a beginning. Now, again, believers don't have a problem with the universe having a beginning. The first chapter of Genesis says that the universe had a beginning, and it began when God said, "Let there be light." It's another opportunity to have a moment of wonder. Of course, if you're studying astronomy, you can create all kinds of moments for wonder by having star parties where you go stargazing in a dark place and look at the heavens through telescopes and so on. But even if you just look at it with the naked eye in a dark place, it's, as you know probably, wondrous. Well, the last one there on botany and zoology, we'll come back to that because I have much more to say about that. Now, I've been talking about science. This is kind of low-hanging fruit when it comes to wonder, but this next slide shows, or at least suggests, that in many other places in the curriculum in a school, wonder can be tapped into to captivate the attention of students. I'm going to do a model, we're going to talk in some depth about this first one here for literature on Beowulf. In literature, again, in the study of Shakespeare, I think the best way I know of to get into that is these books by Peter Leithart. Brightest Heaven of Invention is his text on Shakespeare, and really helped me to see how studying Shakespeare can be a door that opens so that you see the whole Christian worldview spelled out in front of you. And I don't any longer subscribe to every single thing that Peter Leithart writes in that book, or in this other one, the one right below it, Heroes of the City of Man, which is about the ancient classics. But I find the books very helpful and will help you get your mind oriented in a way that starts becoming sensitive to how to read the ancient classics and how to read Shakespeare in a way that reveals what they have in them that relates to our Christian faith. Tertullian made the famous comment, "What does Athens have to do with Jerusalem?" And he was speaking negatively at that moment about Athens, meaning the whole of the ancient Greek classics, Greek and Latin classics. And he was saying these don't have anything to do with Jerusalem. He was saying we should study holy things and move away from the study of those non-Christian secular world things. But Leithart shows that it's actually the other way around, that there is much to see in Homer and in Dante and in, well, Dante is a believer, but Virgil, Homer and Virgil, that can point to Christ. The idea is this: every feast at some level, the reason humans resonate so well with the idea of a feast and that we love feasts is because there is a great feast that is coming, the wedding feast of the Lamb. That is a reality that has not occurred yet, but it is going to occur. And it's been written about, and it's been a part of the plan of creation since the beginning. And we're destined to be there at it. And because of that, the idea of the feast, the wedding feast of the Lamb, it's embedded in the human soul. So we respond a certain way when we consider going to a feast. So that every feast depicted in literature is actually an allusion to the great feast that we will one day attend. I'm going to skip over languages right now. We'll come back to that in our next lesson. I have another lesson where we're going to talk. Actually, I have lessons where we're going to deal with most of these here, so I'm going to skip lightly over these. We'll come back to history in another lesson. We'll come back to mathematics in another lesson. I won't have an opportunity to mention design again, but so I might just mention this book, The Architecture of Happiness. If you haven't read it and you are involved in design or art at any level, you should read that. One of the fascinating ideas that Alain de Botton puts forward in The Architecture of Happiness is the idea that when we design buildings, the design speaks of what kind of people we might ideally be. Think about that. The building is talking to us, and it's putting forward the idea of what we consider ourselves to be in our most ideal state. What kind of people could we be if we were as good as we could get? Well, this sort of changes the whole idea of the purpose of the design of a building. It's not just functional. It's not just I need 4 rooms because there are 4 people, each needing an office. The building's structure, its shape, its form, its materials, its texture, its everything about it speaks to those in it of what kind of people we are and what kind of people we could be or work to become. So, the point of this first video, if I could summarize it, let's just make a couple of points. First, the idea of discovering the wonder moment, the whole key to doing it is to look for a place where mystery is and to then do something different at that moment other than your routine class. I know we do a lot of routine classes where we just put forward the information, but students are most motivated by wonder. You probably know this yourself. Things that are fascinating to you are things that you want to study. Things that blow your mind are things you want to inquire about. All right, so students are the same way. And we'll talk more about some of the challenges that we have to these days in another video. But for now, I'll just say that we want to develop in our students' minds what I call the wonderated mind. We want them to be fascinated by the world because as they are experiencing wonder, they are experiencing one of the strongest motivating forces that exists for them to put effort into their studies and enjoy their studies and enjoy the work that goes with them. So we look for the mystery moment and then we do something different. The second main point is that this is not just something that can be done in science classes where it's easy to find things that are wonderful. It can be done in all kinds of classes because every subject has its own ways of being wonderful. In our next video, we will explore one of these so I can show you what I mean. So that's going to do it for the first video. I hope you'll enjoy this series, and I'll see you next time.